Our final thing we are getting into is this dude, Michael Moreno. Why the Supreme Court's LGBTQ ruling is immoral. So, let's first go over what the Supreme Court's ruling was. The Supreme Court ruled that you cannot discriminate against an LGBTQ person when it comes to hiring them on a job. Okay? Okay. Let's watch. Let's see.
On Monday, June 15th, the Supreme Court ruled in a 6-3 decision that employers are legally prohibited from firing employees for being homosexual or transgender, keeping in line with other anti-discrimination laws associated with the Civil Rights Act, like outlined workplace discrimination based on race and gender. Now, I know this is going to be a hot take, and I'm probably going to lose some subscribers for saying it, but these laws are bad. They shouldn't exist. Let me explain. First, let me make it clear that I'm no fan of discrimination. I think that employers who want to hire and fire based on irrelevant personal characteristics are wrong. I don't think they should do it. That being said, what people should do and what they should be allowed to do are not the same thing. For example...
Oh, this is going to be one of those fucking legalese things. Okay, so, look, here's what happens. If, I'll just explain this really fucking quickly. If you, as an employer, or this is an employer issue, if you are allowed to run a business in a country, you, as an employer, will be subject to the laws of that country. Plain and simple. If you, as a business in that country, do something against the law in that country, then you kind of have to deal with that shit. Now, let me explain something for Mr. Michael Moreno here. There's a difference between a normative world and the real world. In a normative world, a world that we should be striving for, a better world, an idealistic one would even say a utopian world, nobody would discriminate on these factors. Nobody would. But it turns out that people do. Now, let's explain the ideal situation for laws to work. In an ideal world, we wouldn't need laws at all. Because in an ideal world, nobody would infringe on anybody else. But that's not what happens. So currently, we live in a world where, while we may not want laws that infringe on our liberties, we do have to have laws that prevent you from infringing on other people's liberties. Now, I do understand that there's a difference between positive and negative rights, and I believe, I have not watched this video yet, but I believe he's probably going to get into that. Just because that's a factor here. So let's continue.
I don't think people should watch porn. I think it's degenerative, but they should still...
I don't think people should watch porn. It's degenerate. Okay, dude. Okay, well, I hate to tell you this. Nobody gives a fuck what you think is degenerate. Nobody. And that's almost a fucking dog whistle at this point.
Still be allowed to, because it's their life and they're not harming me. So why should I?
Ah! There's the trick, though. It is your life. You are not harming somebody else. Cool. Agreed. 110%. Good. We got it. Excellent. Now, here's the question. Here is the question. Is there potentially a difference in who is getting harmed when you tell somebody who's LGBTQ that you will not hire them because of that? Is there a difference? Oh, the difference is that you actually are hurting somebody. Well, I'm sorry. I completely forgot that these situations were entirely fucking different.
I have a say. I don't think people should drink alcohol or smoke weed or eat junk food. But again, they're not harming me and it's their life. So
that's kind of the qualifying thing, dude.
Don't get a say. Now, does this mean that I'm complacent with immorality? That I just let it happen without saying anything? No, I try to show people why these things are bad and help them stop doing it.
Then please show me why pornography is bad. And if your argument is going to be, well, you can become addicted to it, you can become addicted to anything. The fact that you can become addicted to it is not the problem. Porn addiction is a thing that needs to be taken care of and needs to be handled on a serious level, but that's not the issue. If you're going to say porn is bad because you should be having sex with real people, what about people who don't actually have that ability? What about people who don't have that want? They happen to be asexual and sex repulsed, but they still have a somewhat of a libido. They still want to just ejaculate. Porn is an option for them. They don't want to deal with any real-life person, and why should you force them to be subjected to have to do that? But let's continue.
I know that at the end of the day, it's their choice because it's their life. And while business owners probably shouldn't discriminate, they absolutely should be allowed to because it's...
Why, though? Wait, but every single thing you've said, every single thing you have given as a reason thus far has been an example of something that does not harm someone else, and that if a regulation was put up, it would be stripping people of their rights. But stripping a business, which is not a person, of the right to discriminate against minority groups, that does not hurt anybody. That doesn't hurt anyone at all. The only person it hurts is in this normative utopian world that you think exists in your mind. It might hurt people in that world where it's taking away from somebody's negative rights. That's not how this works, though. We don't exist in a normative world. We exist in reality. I made a point earlier about the difference between these two things, and I don't think I actually ended up saying the point. So let me explain the point clearly here. In a normative world, in an ideal world, we wouldn't have to have these laws, but we don't exist in a normative world. We don't exist in an ideal world. So we end up having to have these laws so that disenfranchised people do in fact have the ability to navigate the world in a way that benefits them and does not hurt other people, as opposed to is rigged against them. Because we don't live in an ideal world. We can work on constructing an ideal world, but we don't live in one. So we don't legislate as if we lived in one. What Michael Moreno is explaining here is that we should enact policy as if we lived in this normative world, but we don't. That's not a thing that we actually exist in.
It's their business. You should be allowed to do whatever you want with your business for whatever reason you have. You're not obligated to hire anyone, and no one is entitled to work for you. What you do with your own life and why is entirely up to you.
Yes, but do you not see the difference between what you do and your own life being up to you and being a business in a position to provide wages to the general populace and your ability to actually act on that? Do you not see a difference there? Do you not see do you not see the dichotomy here? These are not the same things, but you're equivocating them as if they are.
This is the principle of liberty, that all people should be allowed to follow their own pursuits, which logically necessitates that they cannot use that ability to take it away from other people, since it...
Yes, exactly, which is why a business should not be able to use their own liberty to pursue their own ends to take away from the ability for a minority group to be hireable. Yes, you're right. You're this close to the conclusion. But you're fucking wrong.
It applies to all people. This is why people have freedom of speech. It's why they have freedom of religion, which is essentially freedom of morality.
What? What? Freedom of religion is not essentially freedom of morality. No! What the fuck? Morality exists independent of religion. There are religions that bake morality into its structure, but morality, the concept, is not religious. If you try to argue that morality, the concept, is religious, then you have to make the argument afterwards that religion has a monopoly on morality, which is something that there are, especially monotheists, who have been attempting to argue for ages. Religion does not have a monopoly on morality. And freedom of religion is not freedom of morality. Because if it were freedom of morality, then you wouldn't have to agree to the objective standards of morality, or at least the attempts to, that get encoded into laws. You could say that, well, I'm a Muslim, so I get to discriminate against non-Muslims. I get to tell other people they can't eat pork. Or, I'm a Christian, I get to discriminate against other non-Christians by saying that they can't get married in my fucking orchard. That's not how this works. Your individual morality is yours, but it begins with you and ends at somebody else's nose. And usually, when that happens, legislation is enacted in order to make sure that you do not step over that line and step on that person's nose.
People are allowed to say things that you don't agree with, believe in gods that you don't think exist, hold values that you don't. Just because you think something is wrong doesn't mean you get to force that on someone else. Your opinion, no matter how correct it might be, does not take precedence over human rights. There's no reason why you or me or anyone else should have any say on what someone else does with their own life. And
Correct. So let me explain this in a way that hopefully, ideally, maybe makes sense. Maybe. Just maybe. The statement, and we'll reiterate it one more time.
Or me or anyone else should have any say on what someone else does with their own life.
So, you should not have any say on what someone else does in their own life. I agree. Now, let's say that you are an employer or a person in a position of power, and you have access to the things someone else needs to live. Here in a capitalist society, that would be wages. You are the gatekeeper between this potential proletariat worker and the ability to actually be part of that working class, integrate them thoroughly into that working class, and be a contributing member of society. You are the gatekeeper of here, because you are the capitalist. You have the ability to gatekeep this very important thing that somebody needs to live. Let's say this person's 18 years old, got kicked out of their house, probably because they're LGBTQ, because that still happens a fucking lot. Let's pretend that you are the gatekeeper, and you get to tell them that actually, because you're gay, you don't get to get paid. You don't get to have a wage. Now, let's think about this really, really hard. The statement:
you or me or anyone else should have any say on what someone else does with their own life.
Does this not mean that the capitalist, the CEO, the owner of the business that has the ability to hire, now can have a say in what another person can or cannot do with their life? I would hire you if you just weren't gay. Now you're gonna start somebody down the path of trying desperately not to be gay so that they can fucking eat. So that they can go and get food. So that they can get wages, the meager fucking $7.15 you're willing to pay them at your burger flipping shit shop. For them to be able to get these wages, they've got to try to find some way to not be gay now. Are they going to come to you next month and say, let's say that the first conversation goes like this: Sir, I would very much like to work at your establishment. I think that it would be a fine place, and I think I would be an excellent addition to the staff. Well, you see, son, I would love to take you, but my religion, right here, hold on, I gotta pull it right out my ass, one sec. My religion says right here that if you're gay, go away. Son, are you gay? Well, sir, I don't actually think that's any of your business, but if you have to know, I kind of do have a husband. And actually, all things considered, he's actually in the hospital right now, and I desperately need employment. I need to be able to afford insurance. I need to be able to afford being able to put food on the table. He originally was the breadwinner, but I have to take that now because he's sick. Look, I feel for you, son. I really do, but I just can't help you. If you're gay, you gotta go away. That's what the good God book says. and I hit the table. Turns out I live and drink stupid. Well, if that's the case. Okay, so now a month takes place, right? A month has happened. A month has passed. Guy comes in again. He submitted his resume again. He's passed his 30 days. Sometimes it's 90. Sir, I've been reading your book. I'm totally not holding it upside down. I've been reading your book. And, I've divorced my husband, and I have decided that I do not wish to be gay anymore. Now, this is the part where I break the fourth wall and talk to the audience and tell them that actually he is still dating his husband, but he's legally divorced his husband because he wants to be able to get this job because this job happens to have the insurance he needs to protect his partner, to save his life. Back to the play. So, could I potentially be employed at your establishment? Well, let's see that book, son. Let's see that book. Okay, let's see. Yep, that looks like mine. It's bent like mine. You might have even stole this one from me. That's weird. Well, considering that my ancestors did steal this land, I guess that's holding in principle. You're hired. You ain't gay no more. You learned your lesson. Come on. Let's get you in the back and get you learning how to flip some meat. Oh, thank you. That was easy. Okay, now, the employer in this particular scenario had the ability to determine whether or not another citizen is allowed to get wages. Now, they already have this ability because they're employers, but by having that bar of gay, this employee, who I'm using a reductio ad absurdum, I'm using a perfect storm scenario, this employee had to literally LARP being straight in order to get a job. Now, and this job might be the only one in their region that actually has the insurance that he can actually use to help his loved one. You see how we just kind of coupled those things together there? Fun. Now, this guy was not able to help his loved one as he existed. He had to LARP someone else completely, lie to his employer in order to get a job. This is the scenario that people found themselves in for years. Let's run a fun history lesson. Here. Do you know the amount of cases in the last 8 years with headlines like this? Father wants to marry son. Now, but when you read the article, because you look at the headlines and you're just like, it's incest, it looks like the shit in my book, it looks like Adam and Eve, it's bad, it's wrong. But when you actually look at the article in question, it wasn't father trying to marry their biological son. It was, in fact, one gay gentleman who could not actually have his partner benefit from marriage, getting the legal benefits of marriage, being able to share health insurance, being able to have you as a first person that is allowed to come into a hospital room. So he ended up adopting his partner because that was the only way to extend those liberties, extend those privileges that are benefited to married couples to his partner, because marriage was not legal. So, this article, you read it, disgust, and then you read it more and you go, wait, why did he have to adopt somebody he was dating? And then you realize that they were adopting because that was the only way to functionally get the same benefits as marriage, before marriage became legal in the United States. At least gay marriage became legal in the United States. Do you know how many articles of those I read years ago? At least 3, and that's when I wasn't looking for them. It's also when I didn't care. I didn't run this channel yet, so I didn't care. I had no reason to care. It was more than 3 years ago. It was more like 5 years ago. Now I have a reason to care. Now articles like that, when I see that, it disgusts me because I know that that existed because of a system that didn't allow people to exist as they otherwise would want to. Now, granted, there's a smaller issue where polyamorous folk are not able to have these marriage liberties either, but I am not going to try to put myself in that same category. I'm just not. So, what these people ended up having to do is they had to try to sever the legally binding statement that said that they were father and son, per the state, in order to get married afterwards, which led to such fun headlines as "Father wants to marry son," when that's not what was fucking happening. But when you read the articles, you see that stuff. And I don't want to pull one up right now, but if you guys want to look and just link it in the chat, there are enough of them. There were at least 3 that I found, again, 3 to 5 years ago. But this was stuff that happened in the United States because people were not able to actually enjoy the benefits of marriage. This is an environment that also discriminated against people for being gay in the employment area. So what do you do when you want to have the civil liberties afforded by marriage, and you happen to be gay, and you need to save your partner who's currently on deathbed? You need insurance to save their life, and the employer here is the only one that can do it for you. Again, this is a reductio ad absurdum. So, we go back to the skit. Yeah, I'm just sitting here flipping burgers, and oh, hello, Earl. How are you doing today? Oh, hey, Tom. So I hate to interject. I hate to get in here, but the boss said something about you being gay once before, but you ain't no more. Oh, yeah, that's just, I don't want to talk about it, but you know, and I hate to be nosy, but I heard in the grapevine that you just adopted. You just adopted a son? Oh, yes, technically. And hang on a second. But what's the name of your son? Oh, his name was Johnny Y. Now, boss said that was also he gave me this sob story from you, and that's the same name as your late husband, wasn't it? Isn't that a bit weird for you? Look, I just don't want to talk about it anymore, okay? Can I just work? Yeah, I guess. Okay, so, what has happened in this scenario? In order to keep the benefits of marriage, people have to reuse this older system of circumventing that legal loop, of having to adopt, so that they can go back into the closet and hide, but still provide that insurance, still provide those legal benefits, in this case, to save a partner's life. Now, again, and yeah, you can adopt people that are the same age as you. This is a thing that people had to do for years before marriage licenses would be given to gay couples. The scenario that I just gave you is not outside the realm of possibility, because if you are allowed to legally discriminate, then people have incentive to do everything in their power to hide their sexuality. And especially in cases where they already have a partner, they'll have to do things like go through a messy divorce process and then find other legal ways of providing their insurance. It's a shitty situation. It's not ideal, but it is the scenario that you end up expecting when realities, like the one that Michael Moreno, wants to impose, end up being the case.
And it takes a profound amount of arrogance to think otherwise. But Michael, it's not just their life, other people are involved. Sure, technically other people are involved to the same degree that other people are involved when a girl refuses to date someone. That doesn't mean that she's violating their liberty. Other people are involved insofar as she is protecting her rights from other people.
So, if a girl doesn't want to date you and she's protecting her rights, If she's protecting her rights by not dating someone, then I would agree this is because she is an autonomous individual who has personal rights of association. Businesses are not autonomous individuals, and they do not enjoy the same liberties as autonomous individuals, nor should they.
They weren't entitled to a relationship with her to begin with, and the same applies to businesses. The only time involvement matters is when there's harm. If they're not harming you, you don't get a say. But Michael, they're harming people when they discriminate against them. No, they're not. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of the difference between not helping someone and harming them. The lack of a positive is not a negative.
Yes, because positive liberty is the possession or capacity to act upon one's free will, as opposed to a negative liberty, which is the freedom from external restraint on one's actions. This is true for individuals. Unfortunately, Michael Moreno is making the unfortunate indistinction, not distinct. Wow, cannot speak. I cannot speak. Unfortunately, what Michael is doing here is treating corporations, treating businesses like individuals. And moreover, he's playing the woe is me card for businesses that have all the power in this situation. Currently, right now, if you're unemployed, when it comes to another business and you're trying to get employed there, you don't have any power. You don't. But Michael's upset that a little bit of power was given to the workers. Now, what do we call people who get upset when a little bit of power is given to workers? I'm sure that we had some, like, union busty name for them.
Lack of +1 is not -1, it's just 0. And choosing not to help someone is not harming them, it's neutral. If I don't give money to a homeless person, that's not the same as me taking money from them. And so if I don't hire someone, I'm simply choosing not to help them. I'm not harming them, and I'm not violating their liberty.
If you are choosing not to hire someone because they are a minority, something that they do not have any ability to change, you may be the only business that they actually can apply to within their area. Let's say that everything in their area requires 2 to 3 years experience, but you happen to own the only fast food joint. It's a really unfortunate scenario, but it's not outside what has happened in the past before. When you control that job, that ability for them to get wages, it's not just not helping them to maliciously discriminate against them. It is literally, in the words of what I said, malicious discrimination. I want to see if there's any actual substance to this video besides a conflation of individuals and businesses, and if there's any meat on it besides businesses should act like individuals and we should be allowed to discriminate because hate am the good, pornography am the degeneracy.
Now you might respond by saying, okay, but what about when you fire them? You're putting them in a worse position than they were before, since they had a job and now they don't. So you've harmed them. Also not the case. Giving a positive and then taking it away is still not negative, it's neutral. If I let a homeless person stay in my house and then change my mind and kick them out, I haven't harmed them. They were already homeless to begin with. I've simply neutralized the situation. Sure.
Sit on that one. Sit on that one. Just for a second. Just for a sec. All right. Now, let's consider a scenario. I happen to have one plate and one fork that I will use as props for this conversation. Okay. According to Michael Moreno's logic, if I am starving and you have the ability to give me food, and you hand me this plate, I need to put food on it. There we go. You hand me this plate with some delicious food. I know, finally, some good fucking food. And I grab a fork that you have, of course, lent to me as well. And I go to take this first bite. I haven't eaten in a week, by the way. You're being very gracious. Thank you. And then you steal it. I would have dropped it or done something more dramatic, but it's a ceramic plate and a glass bottle. I just... What? Why did you do that to me? I was going to eat that. Well, you see, I had given you a food, and then I took it away before you had a chance to eat it. So actually, your situation is exactly identical to the one you were in before. I have actually not harmed you at all. Okay, so we're just ignoring the mental harm that came from you swiping away something, from you carried on sticking me. We're ignoring that. You guys want me to eat the Tabasco? Is that... Anyway. We're ignoring the mental harm that you just subjected me to. That harm apparently doesn't exist in Michael Moreno's world. We're completely ignoring that mental harm. This means that any job... let's just say I was previously jobless. And then I got a position and I worked at it for 30 years. I provided so much to my company, and then the company fires me in a layoff spree afterwards because, we just gotta hire a new guy who can do the exact same shit because he had 8 years of college, but we really don't want to pay your pension, so we're gonna cut you out and bring this guy in at new higher wages. When you do this, you are in fact engaging in harm. This is not just a mathematical +1, neg1 theorem thing where everything balances out, everything's a zero-sum game, nobody wins, nobody loses. There is harm in doing that. When you bring a homeless person into your house, if they have not done anything at all, and then you just kick them out after 2-3 hours, a couple days... Yes, it should be your right to do that in the case of the homeless person, because again, we're talking about individuals, not businesses. This is the conflation that Michael is engaging in. By saying you can have a permanent home here, for instance, or you have a home here contingent on you obeying certain rules, and then, regardless of that verbal agreement, you kick them out of the house, you are engaging in harm. You are completely uprooting what somebody has established as safe previously. You've inadvertently caused damage to this person. But you think that because in the world of the theoretical everything exists in a series of +1s, neg1s, and zeros, nothing bad has actually happened. That's not how the world works. At all. You're ignoring all of the nuance of the situation and trying to boil it down to a base mathematical theorem. I'm sorry, but reality is more convoluted than that.
Sure, the act of neutralizing the situation, of going from 1 to 0, required negation, but the overall scale is still not in the negatives. If my parents are paying for my bills and then suddenly they stop, they haven't harmed me. They've just stopped helping me.
Okay, so let's say that your parents are paying your bills because you are unemployable for some reason. Let's say your parents are paying your bills because in this reality, the businesses around you decided they didn't want to hire you because you happen to be gay. So your parents are paying your bills. And then one day, your parents just decide they don't want to. Let's say your dad was on the verge of not wanting to, but your mom convinced him to. And then your dad explained his situation to a friend at work, and that friend is a fucking homophobic asshole. And that friend just goes, "You know, Earl, your son, he's gay, right?" Yeah, Tom, why? It doesn't matter. Anyway, don't you support him? Why doesn't he just get a job? You know, I've been saying that to Martha for a while, but I do not want to get her angry or anything, and we love our son. We're gonna support him. It's fine. Yes, but aren't you enabling him? Like, because you're paying his bills, what incentive does he have to actually go out and get a job? Aside to the audience, let's completely ignore the fact that he's tried. He's fucking tried hard. But the business said he couldn't. Wouldn't it incentivize him to grow and improve as an individual if you cut him off? That seems like that would be the right thing to do. And I know you're the parent. I don't want to tell you how to parent your children, but at the end of the day, it seems like that would probably be the best thing to do. It seems like he would grow into a better person if you did that. You know, I'm going to talk to Martha about that tonight. That sounds reasonable. Thanks. Now, in this scenario, the parent is actively harming the child because they are cutting the child off when the child didn't do anything. Nothing changed. And the child could still be desperately trying to get a job, doing everything in their power. But then when you cut this away from them and then potentially subject them to homelessness, but in the magical world of Michael Moreno, none of those considerations matter. None of that mattered whatsoever. None of that extra nuance, none of it happened. Also, hello, Hylia. How are you doing, boy? He has decided that he wants to be here, which is fine. Hi, Hylia. And no, I don't think any court would agree with Moreno's assertion. I don't think there's a reason to go into more of his video. I don't. If you got, you know what? I'm going to drop his video in the chat. And if you guys find something that is worth me going over more after this stream, then message me in Discord and I will gladly dedicate a different video to it. But from what it seems, he's existing in an idealistic world, and that idealistic world can boil everything down to simple math, when that's not how the real world works. This is a very sheltered and privileged position. I'm not saying he is sheltered and privileged, but this is the type of conversation I would expect from someone who is.